Hello and welcome everyone to our SEND talk. Today we're really lucky to have with us Neil McKay. Neil is an experienced teacher who has taught for 26 years in secondary schools and has worked with a wide range of young people in terms of age and need. In 1998, Neil developed the concept of dyslexia-friendly schools and now works as a freelance consultant and trainer with educational establishments internationally. Neil's aim is to offer workable responses to a range of learning needs to enable young people with learning differences to achieve in line with their peers. Today, Neil's going to talk about how we can support with different types of homework. So if you'd like to ask any questions, please type them in the chat and we can go through them at the end. But without further ado, I will now hand over to Neil.
Thank you, Dion. Well, good evening, welcome. And if I greet you in the language of my home, I'll say Noswyddar Croeso, because this is coming to you from sunny North Wales. If you watched I'm a Celebrity, Greek Castle is just around the corner. But we're going to do this in English because my Welsh is rubbish. So we're going to focus, as Dion said, on homework tasks. And this is based on one of my books, Taking the Hell Out of Homework. And I have 3 children. I have 2 girls amongst that lot. And my youngest daughter learns differently. And I realized that when I was working with her, she has dyslexia and a range of neurodiverse needs. I was using the tricks of the trade as a dad and as a teacher. And really, that's how the book came about. And what I will present to you tonight has, I wouldn't say traveled the world, but it's certainly been workshops in Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, Singapore, Europe, all sorts of places. And the reason I'm saying this is because this is not just something which we put together. This is a solid piece of research-driven approaches to homework. One of the big things about homework, of course, is stress. And what we know is that once anybody becomes stressed, once my youngest daughter becomes stressed, she just stops thinking completely and she learns nothing. And it's been said, I think, quite accurately that about 80% of remembering what to do, how to do it, they're related to stress. If we then, as mums and dads, carers, can get the stress out of the system, then we can minimize the difficulties that we're just dealing with the homework itself, not with all the underlying stuff. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask you, please, to go with me on something which I always do when I present this event. Now, I can't see you do this. Normally, we'd be doing this with a room full of people, mums and dads, often with their children. This workshop works particularly well if you have your children with you, because it means that I can teach you and then you can teach your kids while I'm there to help. But I'd like you to go along with me on this because it does make an important point. So in a minute, what I'd like you to do when I say go is out loud, obviously to yourself, just read those colours as fast as you can, okay? So if I said ready, steady, go, you will go, and we would go blue, green, blah, blah, blah. So I suspect you went blue, green, yellow, blah, 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 blah. You were very, very fluent. And the reason you were so fluent is because you've done it so many times, so it's grooved in. You have the neural pathways in your brain, okay? If I asked you to do the same thing and read the words, when I say go, how quickly can you read those words? Are you ready, steady, go? Red, blue, green, brown, yellow. Yeah, once again, total fluency, because it's something you've done over and over again, as I said before. So this is where it starts to get tricky, and this is where my point comes. So if I showed you this again, okay, this time when I say go, what I'd like you to do, please, is not read the colours, the words. I'd like you to read the colours that the words are written in. So red actually is blue, and blue is black, and white is brown, okay? So as fast as you can, please read me the colours that the words are written in. Ready, steady, go. And I suspect that's quite enough of that. Okay, so stop as far as you've got. Now, when I do this, I can imagine the scene at home. You start off quite well. It becomes absolutely chaotic. You're sort of going blue, black, yes, white, no, brown, and so on. Your fluency is gone. And the reason your fluency is gone is you've never had to do it before. My point here, of course, is that I'm going to suggest techniques and strategies which your daughters, your children have never done before. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be as uncomfortable as it was for you doing this last activity. If this activity was important to learn and to be able to achieve fluently, it's going to take you a while to achieve it. It's going to take a lot of practice, a lot of repetition, a lot of pain to get there. So when we talk about different techniques to our children, let's bear this in mind. It is going to be changing the habits of a lifetime. We have to prove that it's worth the effort. What's in it for me? Why should I work this bit harder? Is it really going to make a difference? Yes, it will, but it is up to us to carry it through. So let's look at comprehension first of all, taking the hell out of the comprehension homework. So something comes from school, it's got a passage, it's got perhaps got some pictures, questions at the end and so on. So let's think about how we address that. And we'll talk about reading to remember. Now, context is the king here. Context really, really matters. I can't emphasize how important that is. Now, when you dive into GCSE, some of the things I'm going to suggest you may not be able to do. But on the way to GCSE, everything we're going to talk about actually works. So without the big picture, it's a problem. Now, my client group here, because of my background in dyslexia, are the girls who think faster than they read it. They think faster than they write it. They think faster than they get it down on paper, and so on. They talk a subject beautifully, use all the subject-specific words beautifully, but struggle to spell them. So this is my group. And what we know is that fluent readers are very effective, but you can actually compensate for a lack of fluency through context. So one of the first things we do when we get a comprehension is to go down the I see, I think, I wonder route. So this comprehension piece is obviously going to be related to climate change. We have this rather gruesome picture. And just going down the what do you see, what do you think, what do you wonder, asking your girls those questions, asking them to ask themselves those questions is the first step in setting the big picture. I see, I think, I wonder. And what happens by this, it brings in their prior knowledge, and prior knowledge is critical again to comprehension. I see, I think, I wonder. This picture comes from Google Images. If you Google thinking stems, metacognition, you'll get. So these are the sorts of questions really that we want our girls to be asking in a comprehension setting as homework, and also in a comprehension setting in class test, end of unit test, end of year exam, whatever. Just asking those questions before you start, absolutely critical. This presupposes that you perhaps have a picture to work on, and very often you do. When you don't, I also have a strategy which I'll share with you at the moment. But if we can go do that first, it's so important to stop, take a breath, and go through that process. So the importance of context is critical. What we find with girls, boys, learners who are on the dyslexia spectrum is that their listening comprehension, in other words, when we read it to them, oral expression telling us all about it, and their reading comprehension is often about where it should be. Where they fall down is on accuracy and spelling. Now that really is quite an important point, because what it means is that all the thinking actually is very effective. And perhaps the subtext, a theme running through my work, is my determination to separate in the minds of teachers, of parents, of carers, any link whatsoever between accurate reading, in this case, accurate writing, accurate spelling, and intelligence. What I can reassure you as a dad as well is that if you have a thinking girl who is struggling with aspects of basic skills, don't worry. It's much easier to teach a thinking child how to improve their reading and their spelling and their writing than it is to improve a child who can read and spell and write but can't think very well. Okay, so absolutely no link whatsoever between accurate reading, accurate writing, accurate spelling and intelligence. And to prove the point, our glorious government, our glorious post-Brexit government, everybody in the cabinet writes, spells, reads very, very accurately. And that's all I'm going to say. So if we can harness this power, we can actually sort out comprehension quite nicely. So Prior knowledge is the quickest fix. The more a learner knows about a subject, the more we can remind them of what they know about a subject. And critically, when we're not there, the more they can remind themselves about what they know, the easier it is for them to make sense of the reading, despite dodgy decoding and maybe fragile fluency. So in order to make the point, before I get into the technique, I just want to share with you a piece of research, because I think the research base is quite important. This is quite a seminal study, baseball and comprehension. And they had 4 groups of learners. They had a group who read really well and knew a lot about the subject. They had a group who read really well and didn't know much about the subject. They had a group who didn't read very well, but they knew loads about the subject. And a group who didn't read very well and probably didn't know very much at all. And when I present this to teachers, I always say, well, look, rank the groups. Which group do you think will come top? Which group will come second? Now, the top group's obvious. It's going to be the high reading ability who know a lot about baseball. But it's the group that comes second, which is the ringer here, and which really pays all in terms of what I'm going to be sharing with you. So have a punt in it. Which one would you say is going to come second? And I've given you a bit of a steer, haven't I? Because when you look at the results, yeah, there they go. Look at that. The high reading ability group and high knowledge came top, but look who came second. It wasn't the good readers who didn't know much. It was the poor readers who knew a lot. And in fact, if you look at the right hand side here, the poor readers, beg your pardon, the high reading ability group with low knowledge only marginally did better than the low reading group who didn't know much. High knowledge is absolutely critical, and if we can get our girls to harness their prior knowledge, they are away. So prior knowledge is really going to compensate for any lack of reading ability. Now, I've got the word ability there. I think I should change that to fluency, because there is this view that reading fluently is somehow good. It's only good if you understand. Weaker readers, our weaker readers, my daughter, can do nearly as well as strong readers if they've been introduced to the key elements before they do so. Or if we're not around to introduce them, we can help them do it for themselves. So let's look at a way of activating prior knowledge. Homework comes home. Mom, Dad, whatever, I've got to read this, answer these questions. Oh, great. What do we do first? Now, when I was in school, all my teachers said, read all the way through before you start, whole thing, all the way through. Which is a remarkably silly thing to say. It's only marginally less useless, I suppose. Perhaps read the questions first, you could say. Oh, well, read the questions first, that's better. But it still doesn't work. So what we're going to do here is we're going to activate prior knowledge with a thing I call TCP/QR. And this is the acronym for the order in which I want your girls to address the comprehension. The first thing we do is the title. Now that sounds blooming obvious, but if you take the title on its own, even if there are no pictures, I see the title, I think it might be about, I wonder, where does it fit into what we're doing already? Okay, so the title is the starting point. Read the title, think about the title. What do I know already? We then look at the CP, captions and pictures. What the captions and pictures do, anything in bold, anything which catches the eye, anything underlined, pictures obviously they're there. What these do is validate the title or not. And sometimes it doesn't. And the piece of work we're going to do next, you'll see what I mean. So title, captions, pictures, they get us into the contextual ballpark. Do we read it? No, we don't. We read the questions next. We can highlight the action words, describe, discuss, explain. But the critical thing about reading the questions, having already got into the context, is that we can probably answer 1 or 2, maybe 3 or 4, before we actually get into the passage. What that means then is this process can actually short circuit some of the reading. And it can also get you again into the context. So we've done the title, we've had a guesstimate what it's about. Captions and pictures either validate or cause us to think again, and that thinking is important. The questions now help us pick up some more clues, and then finally we read it, and we're reading it in a way we've never read before. Okay, we know what it's about, we know why we're reading it, we know what we're looking for. We've taken a punt on some of the questions. Now we're reading it in order to say, were our guesses correct? And can we fill in any gaps? How accurate were our predictions? So let's make it work. Okay, and in a sense, this will work for learning for tests as well, but I'll come on to that in a minute. So we're going to do something, we're going to do Torrey Canyon TCP/QR. So when I do this, I just present the title Torrey Canyon. Now, Many of us will not know about what the Torrey Canyon is all about, and we'll find out as we go. When I present this to youngsters in secondary schools, I often do this where I'm actually modeling this technique with classes, with teachers observing. So I say, what's it about? And the usual guess is, well, it's about a canyon called Torrey. Very reasonable. Totally wrong, but it's a valid guess from where we are now. I think it's about a canyon. I wonder where the canyon is situated. I wonder what might be going on. I think, I wonder. Okay. And then we've done the T. Let's do the C and the P. We'll look at captions and pictures. So we have Torrey Canyon seabed returns to normal after oil spill. Hang on a minute, they say. Ah, right, okay. The canyon called Torrey is under the water. It's on the bottom of the ocean. There's been an oil spill, and they've managed to clean it up. Prior knowledge is coming in now because we've all seen the effects of oil spills on coasts and so on. There's been a wildlife disaster. That's a dead seabird. So once again, that validates that. Then we come to this one here, which is a real ringer, using the wrong charts. Hang on, what's that all? That doesn't fit in, does it? Now I'm talking this as I'm teaching this. And I say here, look, hold that thought. It doesn't fit in with our current view that Torrey is a canyon under the water. Okay, leave it for now. Move on. We find the Royal Navy are involved. Okay, interesting. Lots of smoke. There's been a big cleanup that fits in with that initial caption. And bioremediation gives hope. Now I've blocked out all the text, obviously. So just working on the TCP, we reckon we're talking about an environmental disaster. It's affected a canyon which is underwater. The Royal Navy has got involved, burnt it off. There's been a big cleanup, and a process called bioremediation is giving hope for the future. Great. Okay. TCP. Q. Before we get to the questions, though, look, there's a data table. And I always say to my learners, always look for a data table. More often than not, there is one. And the data table gives you so many free gifts when it comes to the questions. So let's look at question 1 now, because we're not going to read it at all if we can avoid it. We're just going to do the answers. So when did the Torrey Canyon run aground? Okay, well, can we see when it ran aground? If we skim through the data table, well, there we go. In bold, there's 1967. So we skim and scan, we look for a number. Hey, look, there's a number in bold. So there's number question 1. When did it run aground? There it is. Great answer. 2 points. No reading so far. What was the ship carrying? Ship. Ship. Now, we were talking about the wrong charts, weren't we? So the wrong charts, yes, it's a ship. So, Torrey Canyon is not a canyon. It's actually a ship called the Torrey Canyon. Great, file that away. What was it carrying? Oil, obviously. Okay, 2 more marks. We still haven't read anything. We've just used our brains. Give 2 reasons why the ship may have run aground. Well, one of them is there, isn't it? Staring in the face, using the wrong charts. The second answer, we've located it, and that is quite important too. The answer to the second bit is going to be here somewhere. That is really important because learners who don't trust their fluency have a terrible habit, and it's a difficult one to break, of reading the passage all the way through for every question. So question 1, they read it all the way through. Question 2, they read it again. Question 3, they read it again, and so on, which is a killer. So what we're saying is, look, there's one answer, 2 reasons why the ship may run aground. Well, the second answer's got to be there too, hasn't it? Okay. So there we go. Well, we'll just settle for 1. They were using the wrong chart. So we've done 3 questions. We've got 5 out of 6. Hey, we're cooking now. What was the naval contribution? Well, now what we do is we skim and scan for the target words. There's naval contribution, 62,000 pounds of bombs. Okay, so they bombed it. What did the naval contribution? The Navy dropped 62,000 pounds of bombs on it. Okay, 2 more marks. Describe the scene at the bombing of the wreck is number 5. Well, we can do that, can't we? Because we've got a picture. So we've probably got 9 out of 10 so far, and we've worked smart rather than hard. Gets a bit harder now. How successful was the Navy? No idea. We'll have to read the passage to find out. That's okay. We can do that. We'll throw that one away. How long did it take to clean up the beaches? Let's think about location again. We're looking for words like clean, beaches, and a number. So if you were now doing this, there's clean. So maybe it's here. Can you find the words beaches and clean and a number? I'm sure you can. There's 11. How long? It took 11 days. How do we know? It was the desperate, fast and furious 11 days, if you want to take a bit out of the text. Okay. And we've done that by looking at the question and targeting some words. Clean, beaches, has to be a number somewhere. There it is. Bang. What, same sort of thing. What process gives hope for the future? Process, hope, future. Well, there's hope. So it's going to be here somewhere. Sorry about this picture. I'll tell you what I'll do. I won't do this. No, I can't. That's no idea how that slide got there, but we'll just ignore it. The hope is there, and what we find is that the process of bioremediation is giving hope for the future. How is it working? The information's there. So having done all of that, we've gone through it orally. You and your child will go through it as I've gone through with you. Okay, we don't actually, you can jot down, scribble some answers. Now we're going to come to it and we're going to go through the questions one by one, and we are going to record our answers. But now our child can do it in a way they've never done before. They know exactly what it's about. So when did the Torrey Canyon run aground? We've got that. We know it's carrying oil. We know 1 out of 2 reasons why it may have gone aground. We read that short section, we'll find the second one. How did the Navy help? We know it dropped 62,000 pounds of bombs on it. Describe the scene, that's the picture. How successful? Well, we'll find out when we read the passage. How long did it take? We knew it was 11 days because we question spotted again. The process is bioremediation. How is it working? We've got to read the passage. It doesn't always come as sweetly as that. Obviously, this is the one I use to prove that it works. But more often than not, you're well into 2, 3, 4, maybe even half the questions can come in free gifts. Now, it's also likely that you're doing a piece with no captions or pictures, especially as you go towards GCSE. So we can use a similar process here. So we read the title and we do a see, think, wonder on the title. And then what we do is we look at we read the opening sentence of each paragraph and the closing sentence of each paragraph. And then we think, what do I know already? Once again, we can't see, but I think, I wonder, and that's the process. So stop there for a minute. Okay, I've rattled through that. That's comprehension. What are you thinking? Okay, you've got the chat there. Dion's going to monitor the chat for me. If there are some questions I can address now, I will. If in her judgment we can leave it till the end, I'm happy as well. So having heard what you've heard and seen what you've seen, what haven't I explained as clearly as I should do? What burning questions are on your mind? Okay, please use the chat now. And Dion, if you can unmute if it's appropriate and let me know.
Hi, Neil. We've got a question here.
Yes, please.
Just as teachers, how do you motivate these young people to sort of show, to convince them that it works?
Oh, what a great question. Yeah, it is all about the what's in it for me. And the thing which I find works every time is the idea that you actually can answer some questions without having to read the passage. This is the big clincher. I'm trying to think where I was doing this. I think I was in New Zealand working with a very, very, very disaffected bunch of teenagers. You know, they were singing back on their chairs. They didn't want to listen to me. I was this pom coming in, and all of a sudden, as they suddenly realized that they were answering questions without reading the passage, the chairs went back on 4 legs. They started leaning forward. They found their pens and they were away. this idea that you can somehow game the system is the thing that really makes the difference. And I think it's a great question. It's absolutely critical. We have to prove to them that it works. And the only way we can prove to them it works is by persuading them to, I suppose, turn off their suspicion and give it a go. In fact, I've actually said to a group, right here, we've got a comprehension. You're not allowed to read it, but how many questions can you answer with what we've got? And because we're coming in slightly from left field, and I should say I've spent most of my career working with very stroppy, disaffected teenagers, I find that they do respond to that challenge. If that doesn't answer your question, come back at me, please.
No, it definitely does. I think it's that thing about showing them that it can work and for them to experience that sense of achievement.
Yeah, I think we have to model it. I mean, modeling is a big thing now. So very much as I've done with you, I'm talking all the time while I'm doing this. I'm thinking out loud, and they can see it happening. They can see it working, and when they suddenly realise the power of it, and as I said, because I've been working with pretty switched off teenagers, they suddenly switch on. Because I've never met a child yet who doesn't actually want to be good. I've met loads who don't believe they can be, and I've met loads who believe that the effort might be too great, but they still want it. And if we can tap into that by showing them how to work harder, smarter rather than harder, then yeah, it works. It definitely works.
Definitely agree. Oh, I've got another question that's come up here. My daughter says she struggles to understand exam questions, specifically what they are driving at. She reads them but finds she answers a different question. Have you got any tips on that?
Absolute killer. Yeah. What we have to do, and I mean it comes back to us in school as well, we really have to work on what do the questions mean. So as a mum, as a dad, I think we need, if you go, further education does this very well. So if you can perhaps tap into FE websites, they often they work very, very hard on the keywords of questions, and they universities do as well. What does describe mean? When you've got a question that says describe, what do you have to do? What does discuss mean? What does, and so on. So going back to you, Dion, is this something you're doing in school?
We're definitely doing this in school, and even the modelling of the sort of activity you've just done, we do that in the learning support department, and we see the results that it has for the young people we work with, and that we haven't read. I literally did it the other day. They hadn't read the article, but we'd scanned through. We looked at images, we looked at subheadings, title, and they could answer all of the questions without actually having read much of it at all. So it 100% does work. And if we can teach them these strategies, then it really is enabling for.
You see, this goes way beyond learning support. In one of my roles, I was the line manager for the sixth form. Now I had a head of sixth working with me, but I was, making sure it all worked. So what I'm going to look at revision skills in a minute, but I was doing this sort of thing with the sixth form, and we really had to decide across the faculties, really, does discuss mean a different thing in history? Does it mean a different thing in science? What do those words mean across the curriculum? So opening that out, and so that we, it's a study skill. But it's a study skill really that wants to do it starting in year 7. Otherwise, it's far too late by the time we start doing it in year 10 or 11. I think a house style understanding of what those words mean across the curriculum is what I would be looking for as a senior leader. I don't know whether that's a direction you are going or could go, but that's beyond this brief. But it would sound to me as though something on the website for parents that they can pull down, where there is this shared understanding of what those words mean and model, very simple model answers. I think one might go a long way. I don't know how you feel about that.
that's definitely something that sounds a great idea. I like that on the website thing. So
Yeah,
watch this space, parents. Hopefully something will
yeah,
become
yeah. You need to get the faculties on board,
Yeah.
so that with it, or subject, however you're based, so that we, the language we're using the same language.
Yeah,
You know what it means.
Yeah.
Okay. Any more questions before I move on? That's great.
No more questions at the moment.
Okay, lovely. So let's think about this. This is taking the hell out of learning for tests homework. Come back on Friday. Hey, mum, dad, I've got to learn for a test. Oh, that's the weekend gone. Well, it doesn't need to be. There are ways around this. Just before I do, I'll fire this at Dion, and I'll ask you for the answer at the end of this next bit, which is, what is the agreed length of time a homework is supposed to take in years 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11? Okay, what is the policy on that, please? So if you could give me that information at the end of this session, and then I'll make some points about that. So how long should a homework take in each year, please, for across the curriculum? Okay, so revision is a thing, it's a problem, and human nature being what it is, there's a great temptation to start learning the thing you know best, because that's what you're most comfortable with, which of course is understandable but pretty useless. So this simple chart has, I would say, saved the life, but it certainly made a huge difference in the way my youngsters revise. And this is what you do. You basically look at a topic, whatever it might be, and you look at each heading and you decide where you stand on that heading. If it's no problem, you write that heading there on the bottom. And what that means is, test me now, I'm cool, I've got it. More work needed is just that. Look at that heading and I'm sort of halfway there, but I'm not ready yet. Not a clue means, oh, I can't even remember being in the room when we did it, and there's always a few of those. So that's your chart. And this was me revising with one of my girls, bit of biology. And to my surprise, given that it's decades since I've done biology, I was actually pretty good with photosynthesis and osmosis. Heaven knows why, but I was. So I can park those for now. The heart, yeah, I remembered how it worked. I couldn't remember some of the jargon. So I'm halfway there. Yeah, okay. But not a clue were these three: nutrition, transpiration, and homeostasis. And nowhere. Now you'll notice the numbers there. What I've done is I've numbered them in order of not a clueness. So the one I knew least about was nutrition. That's where I start. I can't duck it. I've only got so much time. And if I waste my time, in a sense, polishing up osmosis, which I know already, it's useless. I need to start with the thing I know least about. So nutrition is the thing I know least about. That's where I start. And then the idea is I should be able to move it into more work needed. The reality is, if I get stuck into nutrition efficiently, and I'll define that in a minute, it actually goes straight into no problem. So I start with nutrition, then I do transpiration, then I do homeostasis. If they all went into more work needed, along with the heart, I can renumber again and then decide my weakest one there, and that's the one I put the time into. I can remember vividly the brother of a lad I was teaching in the sixth form come to A level. He was almost having a breakdown because he just couldn't work out how to work, how to revise. We did this, and he suddenly realized that actually most of his topics were in no problem. He hadn't realized how good he was. And he ended up with perhaps 2 or 3 to concentrate on. He got great grades and off he went. So very powerful, dead simple. If you were to put the topics on Post-its, you can move them across. If you've got on your iPad, you can move it across. Do it how you like, but it just focuses the mind on what you've got to do. Now, there are 2 ways to learn, I guess. One is retrieval and one is restudy. And I'm answering the question from my colleagues asked me. A lot of the work I do is whole school training, and I build my training around the typical questions I get asked. And what I find fascinating is that the questions are the same wherever I am in the world. So I could be working with teachers in Hong Kong or Dubai, teachers in London, exactly the same questions. What do I do when my learners can't remember what they've been revising? They revise it last night and they come in the morning, they've forgotten the lot. They're probably revising the wrong way, and they're probably revising through retrieval. retrieval rather than restudy. Restudy rather than retrieval. I'm sorry, guys, I'm in a muddle here. Ignore me. They're restudying rather than retrieving. In other words, they're reading it over and over again. They're doing the same thing over and over again. So when I was in school, my teacher said, read it, read it, read it. No, it doesn't work. Doing it again the same way you did it doesn't work. What we have to do is help them retrieve the knowledge rather than restudy. And I apologize for getting in a muddle. Retrieval works every time, and it also harks back to that original question, how do I motivate? Unfortunately, retrieval doesn't appear to be working for our learners. And this is an interesting bit of research here. So what you'll see is there are 3 ways to learn for an exam. There's reading, 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 reading. There's reading, 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 testing. And there's reading, testing, testing, testing. Now, the testing means that the child, the learner, tests themselves, thinks like an examiner, thinks like a teacher, and asks themselves questions. So what we actually know is that reading, 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 reading is the least effective. That's just restudy. Lots of reading with a bit of testing is better, but a little reading and a lot of testing is the most effective. Okay, I'll say that again. A little reading, but a lot of testing, self-testing, asking myself the questions is the way forward. Unfortunately, the learner perception is different. And as you can see, as far as the learners are concerned, reading, reading, reading was the best way. Now, this was completely blown out the water by the exam performance, but their perception was it was the best way. And that perception is probably several reasons. 1, I'm familiar with it. 2, it's easy. And 3, I can kid myself I'm working. Because unfortunately, reading, testing, testing, testing is much harder. It's also hugely more effective. So again, we've got to prove what's in it for me. We've got to prove that it works. So restudy, this is a bit of language learning activity. You have the language and the word. Okay, learn it. Just having to put in the English word is more of a retrieval activity because you've got to use your brain to do it. And if we perhaps gave you the initial letter, that would make it even easier. So let's look at this in more detail. Restudy. There we go. You focus on the learning or the skill already presented. Unfortunately, it bypasses a huge part of the brain, and it's actually a lot easier. And it's more immediately rewarding, but it doesn't work. It's far, far less effective. Retrieval, you focus on the whole activity, you reactivate the neural sequence, you revisit the pathways, and it works. So let's try and put this into practice. Here's a classic. The elephant paragraph challenge from some work I've been doing overseas. Let's imagine that you have to learn this passage. So your child comes home, your daughter comes, I've got to learn this, mum, dad, whatever. Okay. Great temptation to read it through. Restudy, no good. Retrieval, though, oh yes. So you or your child cut the passage into sentences. It's a fiddle, but it's worth it. If you cut it into sentences and muddle it up, okay? The task then, first of all, organize the flow, and secondly, organize it into a given number of paragraphs. Now that is retrieval. You've read it through, you've got it in your head, now it's a jumble. What's the correct order? How do I adjust it? And the fact you're physically touching it is critical. Now, if you're doing this with your iPad, once again, with a bit of help, there's a program called Post-it. You can do this on that program. Each piece of information goes into a Post-it. People say, oh, it takes ages. Of course it does. But it locks the learning. And because you and or your child are typing this down, in far better if your child does it, typing each bit of information in, strip by strip by strip by strip, and then pushing it around, you can't do that without engaging with it. Whereas we all know, we can read a book, we can read a passage, we can flick the pages over and over without it going in. So that is what retrieval is all about. It's presenting it in a different way. So I'll take you through one I use a lot. The material is, the actual passage is very simple, excuse me. It's actually Key Stage 2 rather than Key Stage 3 or 4. And yet I've done this with the sixth form using this passage. And my rationale is this: a simple passage, you get in quickly, you get a result, and you get it right. And one of the fundamental principles here is right first time. It's critical for motivation in the future to be successful. Motivation comes from success, not the other way around. Motivated people have been successful. So if we can engender an activity which guarantees success, then it's more likely to be used the next time. So something simple is going to work. So here we have a passage. It's about Jack's new aeroplane. And I use this to model the process. And we're going to use a mind map actually to work this out. And the mind map is going to be have 4 strands to it: a when strand, a where, the characters, and the events. You could put theme and opinion in if you want. Now remember, I'm teaching a technique here. The passage itself is of no value at all, but this is the technique we use. Now, I would strongly urge you to print this out at home, okay? Have it printed, have a hard copy. And you and your child with a highlight pen really needs to be pair reading it. That's the ideal. That's where you and your child read it out together as one voice. And if you're not clear about that, you know, Dion, I'm sure, is doing it all the time. She can help you. But you read it out loud as one voice. You've got your highlight pen ready. And when you come across a when or a where or a characters or an events in this particular piece, whoever spots it first stops reading. And then we have a conversation. What have you found? Yeah. So if we were going to do this out loud, you and I, let's imagine after 3, we read it out loud. 1, 2, 3. Jack and Richard were cousins. I've stopped. Why have you stopped? Characters, Jack and Richard. So we'll highlight Jack and Richard, okay? And they were cousins, so we'll do that as well, because that might be useful. Okay, we carry on reading. They were also very good friends, and they liked playing together. One day, in the middle of summer, I stop again. Why is that? Well, I found a when. One day, highlight, middle of summer, highlight, yeah. Quite key to highlight as little as possible. Okay, we read on. Jack came to Richard and bought me a new toy remote control, and off we go. Okay, so we're reading this thing out loud, and we're identifying the whens, the wheres, the characters, and the events. Now, a passage that may come home from school, it may not fall in quite as neatly as this. So what we do as adults is we read it first, and we decide what are the 4, 5, maybe 6 main themes. Okay, we decide what they are, we identify them, and we say, right, when we're reading this, we're looking for these elements. Okay, that's our job. Paired reading, I'll flow over that now. So it could look something like this, couldn't it? So what we've done here is we've highlighted the when and the where in different colors. Okay, this is not bad at all. I would say highlight as little as possible. The actual conscious decision, which are the key words here, are actually subconsciously locking the learning. So rather than bought with him his new toy, put new toy, remote controlled aeroplane, garden's good, fly the plane. See, I'd actually said do as little as possible, and they begin to cut it down. So that's not bad. So where do we go from here? Well, actually, we've done pretty well. We've taken 170 words down to maybe 50 or 60. And here's the hook. Okay, you say, right, what would you rather do? Would you rather learn 170 words or 50 or 60 words? In fact, you could probably get it down to 40. Oh, I'll go for 40 too, right. But you've got to do the work first. So there's the hook. We do the work. We reduce ultimately the amount of work you've got to do, but you've got to put it in. You've got to put it in to take it out. So you could actually stop there because your child's already engaged with it in a way they've not engaged with before. But we want to go a bit further than that because we want to take this on. So we really lock the learning. We get it into we move it from the working memory to the long-term memory. And once it's in the long-term memory, it's there forever. So in a minute, what we're going to do is we're going to use our little mind map, in this case, when, where, characters, and events, and take it on from there. But what we're going to do is use either Post-it notes or the Post-it app on your iPad. So adults, what we need to do is to create a mind map setting like that, either virtually or on paper. Let's imagine we're going to use paper for now. And what we're going to do is your child is going to write a key bit of information on each separate Post-it. So we've got Jack, we've got Richard, we've got one day, middle of summer, we've got a new toy, it's an aeroplane, it was in the garden, like all that sort of stuff. So we have all these post-its everywhere. Then once we've got these, we're going to do a multi-sensory select and order. We're going to decide where they go against this particular set of basic ordering ideas. Who, what, why, where, when is another one which we use a lot. Okay, so our characters are Jack and Richard. Okay, easy, nice, fine, that's fine. Okay, and they were cousins. Extra bit of information. So we got our two post-its and we join them up with lines to show how they go. And they were good friends as well. When? Where? When? Well, it was one day in the middle of summer. Where was it? It was the garden. The events? Yeah, it all begins to make sense. And every time your child takes a post-it, reads it and decides where it's going to go, it's locking the learning a little bit more. You can do it as a flowchart, equally true. Okay, so if you prefer a linear event, we'll do it as linear. Okay, we're going for retrieval again. Jack, Richard, friends. It works like that. Okay. Doing this in South Australia in the Barossa. If you're a wine buff, you'll know the Barossa. What a place to work, eh? This group of 14, 15-year-olds decided to cut the text up. I don't know why. It wasn't my idea. Had I known they were going to do it, I'd have actually expanded it for them. But they decided, no, we want to do it that way. Okay, fair enough. And they were so thrilled with their way of working that they did. Well, it doesn't matter. The point was, they had a plan, they executed it. At the end of it, it worked. And what I have learned is that often when the lunatics take over the asylum in my class, it's often just go with the flow because they're on a roll, let them go. So from a teaching point of view as well, it's also quite important. So this is somebody revising geography. And the question was, what would you see at the scene of a volcanic eruption? And this youngster has chosen to do a sort of a linear thing in pictures. In order to do that, he has had to completely understand what's going on and then turn all that text into pictures. So we've got ash, we've got, this is people baked in the clay, baked in the lava in Pompeii. We've got lava bombs destroying houses. Yeah, it's great. I'm not saying it's brilliant, but from a teaching point of view, I can mark this. And although you can't do that in GCSE, on the way to GCSE, what that shows me is this youngster really understands what's going on. And then come a question in geography about volcanoes, I know that lad is going to close his eyes, visualize the successful flowchart and write it up. There's history, describe the main features of medieval cottage. Well, if that was going to be a test item, turning the passage into a picture, a labeled diagram is fantastic. If I was doing this at home with my daughter, we would put each label on a post-it. She would draw the diagram, then we would take the post-its off, muddle them up, and she'd put them back. And just that simple reposting of post-its is that retrieval process. You're going back into the neural pathway because you've got to work out where it goes. You can't do it by rote. So here we have examples of all the same sort of thing being done in different ways. It's all the same question, all the same issue. Everyone is valid. Some are better than others. But the point is, having done this, the learning is locked. What we have to guard against, and I'm afraid us dads are possibly the worst at this, is this view that you're not doing it right. What we mean is you're not doing it the way we would do it. And we have to let them loose and let them go. Here's one on Vikings. So the question is, what happens during a Viking raid? Why are they so successful? Well, it could be retrieved in a variety of ways. There's the passage. This time we're going to do a sort of probably who, what, why, where, when, how would be the best for that. Okay, who, what, why, where, when, how. So 800 AD, spreading terror, small parties, 10 boats, 30 warriors. Yeah, off we go. Highlight, highlight, highlight. So there's a mind map core. Who, what, why, where, when, how. There's a flowchart core. There they go. And there's the answers. Okay, that had to be retrieved. That is locked and they're away. This bit in the middle of why is too wordy, but they've no mind it's happened that way. There's another one. Not brilliant, but it's the same process. You can't do it without retrieving. That's lovely. It works. A guy got more marks he'd ever got in a test before. Couldn't believe it. Yeah, lovely. Again, loads of detail. Okay. This child will be an accountant when they grow up. You can see the like the linear, precise, sequential. Yes, absolutely great. Absolutely fine. But the principle is do it one way, then do it again another way. So if you've done it this way, take the post-its off and do it that way. If you've done it that way, take the post-its off and do it that way. Once is never enough. Twice is the key. So I'll flick you through some that we've done, over the years. So there is obviously we can see what it is. Take it off, take all the stuff off, shuffle it up, put it on again, do it again. The sheer act of creating those labels is great retrieval, and then take it off and putting them back is even better. Leaf structure, same sort of thing. There, it's all going off there. She's away. Trying to, that bit of chemistry there. Look, sociological perspectives. This isn't trivial stuff. This is serious stuff. Okay. And I'm working this way with postgraduate groups, master's groups, as well as primary and secondary. Social reforms, yeah. Probably too many words on a post-it. I would like to see those post-its separated a bit more, because less is more. You don't want to overload. Yeah, there we go. So the takeaway is here. We want more revisiting the learning process and less trying to remember the concepts you've already got. So restudy is trying to remember it. Retrieval is the learning process, retrieving it, presenting it in different ways. So let me stop there again before I approach the last element and ask you again. The questions were great. What can I clarify or explain in more detail? Over to you, please. So Dion, is anything coming through?
No questions.
Okay.
One of the things that we've experienced sometimes when we do this sort of work with pupils is that the effort and the amount of time it takes to do it is sometimes a bit of a negative from their perspective. Totally,
I absolutely agree. And once again, we have to prove that it works, because if again, what I've done with my youngsters is, they've revised their way and they've got, pardon me, 3 out of 10. And then I have invested a lesson in revising my way and they get 8 out of 10. And that's the only way I know how to do it.
Yeah.
So I take them through I lead them by the nose almost, and we have fun with it. Yeah. But they're hooked when they realize it works.
Well, I think, yeah, you're right. And what you have to do is no pain, no. They have to work hard to achieve it, which is what you were saying.
And if we do it, if we do it in class, we model it in class, and we have fun with it, and we have a laugh with it, and we do things like open book tests. I mean, that's always important. Do open book quizzes so they can look through their notes and find the answers and this sort of thing. They begin to realize that what their books are for. But if it's a pleasurable experience and it works as well, then they're away.
Yeah.
So I come back to my question of you. What is the homework policy time allowance in years 7, 8, 9, 10, 11?
So we in year 7, it's 20 minutes per 2 to 3 subjects per night.
Yeah.
20
Okay.
minutes. Then as it sort of increases, and then by the time you get to year 10 and 11, it's 14 hours per week.
Okay. Divided between how many, all the subjects, yeah?
2 hours a day.
2 hours a day.
Yeah.
Okay. The reason I say this, and please come back to me, I'm not trying to be difficult here, but we do need, when we do any form of work with our kids at home, we need to, the light needs to be on at the end of the tunnel. So the only way I know to motivate my youngest daughter particularly is that she understands if she were in year 7 or she were in year, if she spends 20 minutes on a homework and she grafts and works her socks off for 20 minutes. I stopped her at the end of 20 minutes and we went on to the next one. And I talked to my school about this, and I would put a little note, 20 minutes, sheer hard work. We stopped at this point. We'll now do the next one. And you know, it wasn't a problem. Would that be a problem with you?
It wouldn't be a problem with us, but it is with them. They don't want to come back into school with homework that's not completed.
I think that we need to work on them so they understand that the important thing is 20 minutes hard work rather than complete something, a badly set homework, which is taking too long.
Yeah.
And I'm talking now as a dad, as a senior leader. You know, what I had to say to my school was, if you're disappointed with the amount of work my daughter's done in 20 minutes, discuss her homework with me.
We don't have a problem. Yeah. No, that's right.
I'm being deliberately confrontational.
Yes. No, well, we are supporting of that, definitely here. Yeah. And we would advocate on behalf of the young people that we teach that exact thing. That is what we would definitely go out to support them in that.
So if we have an ethos across the school that, in fact, teachers are saying, well done, I like what you did in the time. I'm sorry you couldn't get it finished. I'll set you less next time, sort of thing. You know, that sort of conversation could be very powerful, couldn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think we can do. I definitely feel we can do that here. We can have that conversation.
It made such a difference. I caught my daughter upstairs working too hard, so I said, "Okay, look, stop now. I haven't finished, Dad. No, it doesn't matter." Went up again to kiss her goodnight. She was working under her blankets with a torch. And I thought, well, I don't want that. That's not what we should be doing. And the school were brilliant. You know, we talked about this, and it was absolutely fine. You know, you work your socks off. The light's on at the end of the tunnel. 2 hours hard work on Thursday, and that's it, finished. And I found the motivation was there as a result. Okay, let's do writing. The last one. I've got to write this up, Mum, Dad. We did it in class, whatever. Let's do it. Okay, so how do we get that done? So the subtext again is writing to remember. Let's go. And I'm aware that we're using iPads, which is great, especially if you've got the nice one with a decent keyboard. I've recently got one of those. It's much nicer than my flat one. So the feel bad issue here is I can tell you all about it really well, but I just can't get it down on paper. Okay, let's deal with that. I'm going to look at non-fiction, because non-fiction is the style of writing we use most. As a member of the English team, I've always been surprised how much time we spend on fiction, when in reality, as an adult, the only time I actually write fiction is when I do my income tax return. Non-fiction is what I write all the time. And for me, that is the key piece of writing. So there are three reasons really why our girls are reluctant writers. One tends to be too many ideas, so it's information overload. The ideas never come out in the right order, which is paralysis by analysis, and then I can't get started, so I'm stumped before I start. Now, those three things are eminently fixable from a parental point of view. So too many ideas never come out in the right order, can't get started. Those are the three things we're going to deal with. So too many ideas, well, we get our Post-its again, because Post-its are so useful, or we use our app and we brainstorm. I'll talk you through this in a bit. So brainstorming ideas. So I come home, Mum, Dad, we've been watching a video, whatever. We did this experiment in science, whatever it is. I've now got to write it up. And if we talk to our child and we get our child to tell us everything that they can think of, and we write it down for them on these Post-its, it doesn't matter in what order they come out. It'll be fine. Now, if your child is on the dyslexia spectrum, I can almost guarantee the ideas won't come out in the right order. There'll be several burning things they want to get down. And then after they've dealt with those bits, some of the beginning bits, the end bits will come. Our more creative children are not beginning, middle, end thinkers. They're not linear sequential thinkers. They're sort of scattergun thinkers. But if we use either the Post-it app or use Post-its, bits of paper, whatever we use, you can always move it around afterwards. You could list it, but a list is fixed. unless of course you list it and then you cut it up afterwards. So, you know, I'm strongly in favor of this hands-on business. So if now we've got something we can manipulate, if the ideas don't come out in the right order, we can put them in the right order. You can see that picture there is some of my teachers in Hong Kong actually using a clothesline to organize some thinking for an essay. The key points are all there and they're trying to put them into a logical sense, logical order. And then they can't get started. So we're going to get you started, and we're going to get you started really by giving you the words to use to start the paragraphs. And that is one of the greatest gifts we can give as parents and as teachers. We'll give you the words to get started. So let's have a look at this. To make this work at home, we really want small post-it notes. We want index flags, and really some big paper would be great. A3 is best, but A4 at a pinch. Okay. So what we're going to do first of all, if this was in teaching now, we do a group brainstorm. At home, it's you and your child. Your child is firing the ideas. I would strongly urge you to write them down because you're quicker. And if your child is stopping and worrying about how to spell, it destroys the flow. We just want every possible idea. Once we've done that, we do a multi-sensory select and order. Here I've got a linear thing going here. Could be a mind map, storyboard, flowchart. Mind map, we're going to decide on what the basic ordering, what the headings are, the basic ordering ideas. We then, we'll add some value to it. We'll give you some starter phrases. We'll talk it and we'll write it. So let me take you through that process. Okay. We're going to do plastic pollution. Okay. And in order to make this work, so I come home, I've got to write a newspaper article on the impact of plastic pollution on the environment. Okay, great. So we could go straight in, but I wouldn't. If I have the time as a dad, I'm going to get some pictures. Or my child and I will go into Google Images and we'll get some pictures. And what these pictures will do, they will prime the pump. They will remind us what was going on in school. They'll give us an idea. Okay, big question around plastic pollution. Okay, so we're talking about causes, impact, and solutions. Those are our three themes that we picked up. Okay, and these pictures are just reminding us what it's all about. They're priming the pump. So now your child is firing the ideas out at you. You're dropping them down on post-its, just dropping them on the table. Bump, bump, bump. And this is thinking without boundaries. Now we do some multi-sensory select and order, impact of plastic pollution, some obvious paragraph headings, and yeah, plonk them on the piece of paper. Okay, and then what we're going to do is dump the post-its under the logical headings, and then we'll put them in a logical write-up order. Oh, that one's solutions, that one's causes, that one's causes. Okay, don't worry about the order until you've got them all in the right place, and then do the order. So sources of pollution, effect on the environment, and solution. And you can see the process is coming quite nicely, okay, from the post-its. It's much, much better if we offer the headings initially because it takes away the thinking, that particular bit of thinking. I'll skip that because I've talked about, yeah, I'll come on to that in a minute. Okay, so we're going to add value later. Well, so at the moment, we've got our headings, we've got our post-its. Yep, that's fine. So what's going to happen is sources of pollution. We've got source 1 from the brainstorm, source 2 from the brainstorm, source 3 from the brainstorm. That's pretty good. The effects on the environment, we've got a couple of points from the brainstorm, and solutions, we've got a couple of points from the brainstorm. Now, the lovely thing about working this way is that our sources from the brainstorm will almost invariably trigger more ideas. So what happens is that when your child looks at number 1, the source from the brainstorm, they think, oh, hang on a minute. Yeah. So there's a bit of value to be added. It's unusual for the ideas from the brainstorm not to trigger more ideas. So this value added comes, and it could be value added 2, 3, at this point, that point, that point. And the thing can get longer and longer. The reason it works is because this is already concrete. This is here. This is in front of them. So they don't have to think about it. This reduces their cognitive load and it frees off their brain power to think more about what else could go. And if you go back to those pictures and do a see, think, wonder process, it's going to be great. So what we've done is we've taken our initial headings, we've then posted our post-its under each heading, and then we've used our post-its to actually think about what else we know. Okay, we've added some value. So there are many sources of plastic pollution. They include plastics are changing. You see what I've done here is I've actually given my child the paragraph starter. And giving paragraph starters is a great gift. I go back, I was running a master's unit in the University of Wales for teachers getting a qualification in dyslexia. And our first essay came up and they were dreadful, absolutely awful. And when we talked about it, they said, well, you know, we just couldn't get going. So for the next essay, I gave them a mind map with half a dozen or so, probably 8 or 9 actually, academic paragraph starters, giving the evidence, bearing in mind, that sort of thing. Now, the next essays were magnificent because they no longer had to worry about how to start. They could put all their energy into what do I say. So from us as parents and us as teachers, coming up with some generic paragraph starters that can be permed in different situations are absolutely great. So in this context, my child is going to write this up, but I'm going to give her some opportunities, some starters, you know, solution, here we are, solution 1 from the brain. A number of solutions are possible. Scientists suggest that, and that she'll write that a bit up. Cannot overemphasize the power of having paragraph starter phrases. So there's my source. I've got my starter, value added, we're away. So here we are. There are many sources of plastic pollution in a mind map. We've got the food industry, for example, clothing, like examples, another one, boom, 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 boom. There they go. That's paragraph 1 written, isn't it? Paragraph 2, the impact on the environment is enormous. For example, there we have them. And then we have our solutions. The nice thing about this as well, if I go back to retrieval, is this is actually unconscious revision as well. So come a test situation, this is locking the learning beautifully. So in summary, we do our post-it brainstorm without boundaries. Ideally, we as the adults do the writing. We create, in discussion with our child, an appropriate number of possible headings, and we do a multi-sensory select and order. This is marketing course design for the sixth form. Okay. We organize the post-its under the heading. Once we've dumped them under the headings, we create a logical write-up order. Here we go. We add value, and we give starter, you know, phrases. I mean, this one here, first, next, that you can write anything with that. Absolutely anything, just with those. It all just works out. And in fact, I vividly remember a girl I worked with lower down the school who was dyslexic. And we worked out a number of paragraph starters like this. She said, I'm still using them at A-level. And I saw it later on. She said, you know what, I'm still using them at university as well. They're coming every time. And it means I don't have to worry about how do I get started. And then, and this is the critical bit, before your child writes it, they have got to talk it to you. They've got to say out loud what they would write. And this is the key bit here. So your child is going to say out loud, is actually going to turn these post-its into prose, okay? So there are many sources of plastic pollution. They include the food industry, clothing, and whatever else it's going to be. The food industry is a particular problem. For example, most of the words aren't there. These words are coming from our brain. But because your child has those words in front of them already, it's reducing cognitive load, it's freeing off the brain and allowing the process of expression to come. And basically, if they can talk it, they can write it. Turn it on its head. If they can't talk it, they can't write it. So getting them to talk it is absolutely essential. You don't have to write anything down. You can if you wish, but I wouldn't bother, because once they've talked it, you know, they're away. They will start writing there are many, and they will basically write what they've said, and they'll come up with more ideas as a result. And the talking is absolutely critical here. So with that in mind, once again, it's question time. Now, this is the end of my presentation, so I'm open to questions on any aspect that I've discussed, any aspect I haven't discussed. I'll do my best to give you my ideas and my opinion. Let's focus on this initially, okay? So we're talking about a writing homework, getting it down on paper. What can I add to what I've said? What can I explain more clearly? And then after that, it's open house.
I can't see any questions, Neil. But for us in the learning support team, I mean, for us, it's reassuring the things that you're talking about. We are doing lots of this now, and we do see the impact that it has on our learners. And I think if they're supported doing this at home as well, it definitely is. It's really good for them.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to chunk it, aren't we? We're trying to make it, step by step by step. The challenge will be, and I've been there all the time, is that when confronted with a test question, for example, all this good practice goes out the window and they want to just start writing. And I go back to that early question, how do you motivate? And what I think we have to do as teachers, particularly to support our parents, is show them that when they do it their way, which they perceive to be the best way, they might get 6 or 8 out of 20. When they stop and plan it and then write from the plan, they get 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 out of 20. But they have to prove to themselves it works. And I have an anecdote which I think goes with this. I was supervising an A-level drama paper. So I was there for the start, and I noticed that one girl in particular there was 3 one-hour questions. She spent nearly 20 minutes, the first 20 minutes, planning question 1. She brainstormed on the page, she drew a mind map, and then she wrote. So I was intrigued by this, so I came back for the second hour. She did the same thing for question 2. So I had to come back for the third hour, and she did the same. She spent an hour of a 3-hour paper planning her answers, and she got an A. And I said to her, why have you chosen to do this? She said, well, I've realized that if I spend 20 minutes planning, I write more in the next 40 minutes than I would have done had I spent 60 minutes writing. So for her, the penny had dropped. And I guess my responsibility there was to make sure that that penny had dropped for everybody. They'd realized that investing that time at the start actually means you write more at the end. But it's a hard sell. And it takes years. You've got to start in year 7, really.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Because we're often trying to encourage that planning process, but sometimes the girls think it's a waste of time. It's a waste of time. They just want to crack on and write. But if they invested that time at the beginning, they will probably write a much better essay, and also more pertinent to what they are being asked to write about.
Yeah, definitely. A hot tip then is you can do it informally initially, but again, I would urge you to think about it in terms of your whole school assessment policy, is that to give marks for a plan. So if a plan is marked, they'll do it.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. We've just got a couple of questions come up. Sorry, I've just distracted by that. My daughter, working for her GCSEs, was offered a former GCSE student's record cards for revision. She chose to throw them away and write them out herself. Whilst I'm pleased at that, I worry she's out too much. She's put too much info on each card. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. I mean, I would say what a lovely thing to have, but I think what she needs to do is to retrieve that information by presenting it in a different way. So take those revision notes, which have already been done, but present them to herself in a picture form, in a storyboard form, in a mind map form, and so on, so that she's doing it in a different way. Otherwise, it's not going to help her, because in fact the other guy has done all the hard work. So if she's going to use this, it's a bit like those revision planners you can buy in Smith's or wherever. the hard work's been done for you. As a result, I think they're of limited use unless you take the precede information and present it in another way. So it really, really does have to be done in another way. And you're absolutely right. Turning a 20-word paragraph into 3 key words is, if you like, is what it's all about, or 3 phrases, something like this. So knocking it down in a way that makes sense to you, drawing pictures where pictures will, do 1,000 words and so on. So engage with it in a different way. So if your child can do that, then it could be useful. But there's a terrible risk that she'll think she's working well by reading it over and over again or copying it out over and over again. And unfortunately, it won't stick because it's not gone into the long-term memory. That's a great question. Thank you for that.
I've got another one here. Any specific tips for using this at A level? This is obviously related to what you were previously talking about, particularly for a child with a new diagnosis, so has no experience of using these techniques, particularly when dealing with abstract concepts.
Yeah, it's a killer, isn't it? Luckily, I think if your child is dyslexic, they're probably better equipped to deal with abstract concepts than somebody who isn't dyslexic. However, accessing the abstract concepts will be the issue. So you might want to think about getting a screen reader, something like Inclusive Reader, for example. There are loads of them out there, so that in fact your child can read the text and hear the text at the same time. That double input will enable them to access the abstract concepts in a way that really suits them. It's then important that we encourage them. Dyslexic people often tend to be quite visual in the way they see things. So turning abstract concepts into something artistic is very useful. I've seen the most incredible representations of ideas. I'm thinking about history now, original source material and so on, which some of my dyslexic youngsters have really nailed, almost like a like a Bayeux tapestry, as they've allowed their minds to go. So the information processing is the thing which can damage the progress of learners on the dyslexia spectrum. So if we can minimize the issue of reading it through enabling to access it through a screen reader. And it might also be worth looking at a way of a speech to text device, so that having planned it, and I stress you've got to plan it first, having planned it, they can talk it into their device is the way forward. I periodically get interviewed on TV and radio, especially if I'm working overseas, and it's dreadful when they drop a question on you when you haven't had a chance to plan it. If they told me what the question was and I could just jot down some ideas, I can talk coherently. Talking without a plan is really hard. Talking into a speech to write to text device is really hard. But if you've listened to it and it makes sense to you, and you've then presented it in a way that makes sense to you as well, you've retrieved it in a different form, you can then talk it. And if you can talk it, you can write it. Just to give you heart, a good friend of mine is a professor in Tasmania. Jude is a professor of dyslexia, if you like, and she's just had one of her postgraduate students get his PhD, and he can't read and he can't write, but he's got his PhD, and he's done it using technology. He's a genius. He just can't read or write. His ideas are amazing. His ability to see concepts and turn them into something new is second to none, and he's going to be a PhD. So that's the way to go, isn't it?
I've got another question here, just to, one more. My daughter wants to be very independent in her homework, hates me getting involved as it takes longer. As soon as I mention my maths is a massive no. Getting good grades doesn't seem to be motivation, but have seen her cutting things out, so just have to trust in school using these methods. I'm desperate to help her, but she's so reluctant. Have you got any tips for that?
Yeah, oh, been there. I think you have to do a deal, basically. And I think whether it's bribery and corruption, it has to be, I don't know. I would dig in, and I would offer something in return for it, whatever it is. I would say to her, you know, we need to work together on this. If you're prepared to work together on this with me, do things differently, then I'm prepared to do something for you. It's the what's in it for me effect. One of the reasons, and you articulated it very well, she doesn't like working with you because her perception is it takes longer. If, though, we can find a way where she works with you and it doesn't take any longer and the results are better, and she can see that, then you're away. But I think that, you know, you may have to, when the time is right, when she's receptive, sit down with her over a, you know, cup of coffee or something and say, look, you know, we can't, you know, we can't duck this any longer. You and I need to work together. If you will work with me on this, then I'm prepared to enable you, allow you to do something. So what's in it for me is something I want. And, you know, I'm a dad of 3 kids, and I'm afraid I'm all for bribery and corruption. It certainly worked for me. Was that too cynical?
I think we all know where you're coming from there, actually, Neil. Definitely. It's one last state. It's not a question; it's a statement. And actually, Catherine and myself have just been thinking the same. Someone has said, "I'm going to order a stack of Post-its," and I thank you for your advice. Have
fun with it. You know what, I've written 3 books now. I've written loads of articles. I can't do it without my Post-its. And my teachers and my A-level students, who initially looked at Post-its down their nose, suddenly realised that actually, you know what, it works.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's it. There are no more questions.
Okay.
So just want to say thank you, Neil. It's just brilliant listening to all of your sort of really practical, straightforward strategies that will make a massive difference, I think.
Oh, I do hope. I'd love you to get back to me at some time, Dion, and if you've got any positives or even negatives, that matter. But if anybody from your parent group can say, you know what, we did this, and look at the difference. You know, I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, definitely. We definitely will get back to you. So thank you everyone for joining.
Great questions. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been brilliant. And if you have any more questions, I can get in touch with Neil.
Oh yeah, please do. Don't. Yeah,
if that's okay, Neil. And also, if you've got any...
I mean, you know what, people will go, oh, hang on a minute, I wish I'd asked that. You know, through you, it'd be my pleasure.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. And also, same for us. If you need to contact the learning support team and you want to chat through any of Neil's ideas with us, we're always ready at the end of the phone to talk to you or via email. We really enjoy engaging with all of our parents. But yes, thank you everyone for joining. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I hope you all have a lovely Easter. Goodbye.
Well done, Dion.